As I was saying last hour, Andrew Stiles over there at National Review Online on the corner, he says Representative Jim Jordan, chairman of the Republican Study Committee, who has considerable influence among freshmen and conservative members, will not support the 3-week continuing resolution when the House votes on Tuesday. You know, it has $6 billion in cuts. Wow, let's throw a party. His spokesman tells NRO that although he understands that there will be well-intentioned members on both sides of the issue, Jordan will vote against the bill. House Majority Whip Kevin McCarthy, number 3 Republican, said on CNN's State of the Union that Republicans would get this through when it came to tomorrow's vote. However, there appears to be growing unease with the GOP ranks, particularly among freshmen, after a number of prominent conservative groups came out against the bill last week. Just so you know. Now, in addition to Jordan, freshman Representative Tim, how do you pronounce this name, Mr. Producer? The Republican from Kansas. Huelskamp, who we're going to have on this program in an hour, because he's taken the lead. He was the first one to step out. Tim Huelskamp, Republican Kansas. Let's remember that. Jeff Duncan, Republican South Carolina, and our buddy Alan West, Republican Florida. Also John Fleming, Republican Louisiana. These are freshmen who have announced their intention to vote against the short-term bill. I guess they're a handful of those 12 crazy Tea Party guys, huh? You know, I was reading some of these newspapers that I'm compelled to read to prepare for this program, and the other day and I saw the first Republican freshman to break away and say, I'm not voting for this continuing resolution. Nothing personal, but I wasn't sent here to do this. I said, well, who's this guy? It's Representative Tim Huelskamp, Republican 1st District, Kansas. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great now that I've got to talk to you. So tell me what went through your thinking, because, you know, I know there's a lot of pressure to get everybody to vote for this continuing resolution.
Well, there is, but I try to recall who I'm really working for, and it's not other folks in Washington. I got about 700,000 people at home, and frankly, when I went home and told them we cut $60 billion, they cheered until I said, well, we still have $1.6 trillion to go. And so we're going the right direction, but I told our leadership on the last one, I said, you know, we'll give 2 more weeks to the Senate, you know, but they've had basically 6 months. We're halfway through the budget year, Mark, and I just said it's time to get to work. And we're letting Harry Reid and Barack Obama stall this process. And you know, we've got bigger fish to fry. We've got a budget coming next year. We got this debt ceiling vote they want to force through, and you know, we have a mandate from the American people to get our fiscal house in order.
Well, you're so right, and here's my concern. I hope that a number of the other freshmen understand that people are really engaged. They're following this, and they're going to tolerate very little excuses about not waiving this rule or waiving that rule when it's waived before for something else. You know, they want to see action here, and these spending bills under the Constitution, they come out of the House. We know what the prior Congress did. They stuck all this spending in the authorization bill, that is the Obamacare law, and people want it pulled out of there. So it's crucial that freshmen understand that you know, they follow your lead essentially, which is I got to follow the lead of my constituents. Do you get a sense that more and more people up there are talking about that?
Well, I think so, you know, but, you know, you get up here and it becomes, I think, kind of the game. And I think, Republicans have had control of the House for 2 months. Obviously, you still have the liberal left and control the presidency and the Senate. But, I don't think the American people are going to say, okay, we understand, just, moving along at $6 billion every 2 weeks. And I appreciate the cuts, Mark. But when you're borrowing more than that, losing ground every week, it is time to strike while the iron's hot, get this thing done, move on to the next one. And we've got next year's budget coming up, and like I said, the debt ceiling as well. And but I don't think, and I've told my Republican colleagues, I said, Republicans were given a second chance. We will not be given a third. I really believe that, Mark. And times are very critical. We just can't carry $14.3 trillion for much longer and expect to add to that rather than subtract, as the president's suggesting.
You know, Marco Rubio was on this program an hour or two ago. he said the same thing. He said, I didn't come to Washington to play these games with all this drama and all the rest of it on these short-term resolutions. We've got trillions of dollars in red ink. I don't see anybody seriously addressing this. We've got entitlements, tens of trillions of dollars. It's not even discussed up here. And he's saying he's just not going along with this anymore.
No, I agree. I've got a very rural district. I had 26 town halls in the month of February, Mark, and it was pretty clear. $60 billion, are you serious? You still got 1.5 or 6 trillion to go, and you're still talking about now $6 billion a week. And again, I appreciate the cuts because those had never happened before. And but unless you're willing to go to the mat, whether it's on the debt ceiling vote or on the budget here, you're not going to be able to change the culture in Washington. And I refuse to be changed by Washington. It's got to be the other way around. And I think the American people are expecting much more. We also passed many of these riders defunding Obamacare, defunding Planned Parenthood, taking away the job-killing regulations out of the EPA. And it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to fund stuff for 3 more weeks, but to continue to fund each of those things. And it continues to be funded in the short-term CR. That's where I draw the line as well.
Well, because if you vote for that CR, you're voting to fund those things. I mean, really.
On the short term as well.
Yeah.
And, my question has been, okay, when exactly will we take on Harry Reid? I mean, they've had 6 months, and why do they need another 3 weeks? They could work a deal very quickly. And, it's kind of the way they do things up here. I come from the state level where you have to balance your budget. No one seems too concerned about that, and we'll get to that sometime in the 10-year window. And, I sure hope so. Because our international creditors are not going to wait 10 years to get paid.
Well, I just want to salute you because, it takes 1, 2, 6, 10, 12, maybe 30, 40, who knows. We'll start to break away and draw the line and encourage the leadership to have a little bit more, to be a little bit more thoughtful, or maybe you can call it aggressive. Now, let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Did you hold public office before your election?
Yes, I served in the state legislature for 14 years, and I've also learned a little bit. I think about negotiations as you start really high, Mark, and then you negotiate down. And I voted for every amendment that cut something out of the budget during our 90-hour debate on the House floor. And but the tougher battle is going to come when you talk about entitlements. Next year's budget, we're going to be talking about. We've got a Medicare system bankrupt in 6 years. We've got a Social Security system that's going to run a deficit forever now with the baby boomers coming in. You've got a $14.3 trillion debt and an expectation that Obama wants to add another $10 trillion. You got a Medicaid system breaking the states. And that's going to be some real battles. We've got to get this one done and get started on next year's budget. We're debating that already in the Budget Committee. And that's going to be the tough deal because we have to make progress there, real progress, when you put all the entitlements on the table as well. And because we cannot afford all this red ink, and it's just washing up, and it's coming quicker and faster, and the sooner you tackle the bigger issues, I think the better.
I'm talking to freshman Republican from Kansas 1st District, Tim Huelskamp, now who has announced that he will be voting against the continuing resolution. It sounds to me there's really no room to put anything off. It sounds to me that really the goal for the House Republicans should be, as a group, to make clear to the American people exactly the perilous situation that we're in, exactly what you feel needs to be done, exactly what the other side refuses to do. In other words, this is a long overdue argument. It needs to be made over and over again. So if we're sitting here debating 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whether we waive a rule or don't waive a rule, we're kind of losing our moment here.
I totally agree with that, Mark. And we had 4 economic and fiscal and financial experts before a committee last week, a budget committee, and it was very sobering. When I asked the question was, how many years does America have on our current fiscal path? And they said, well, assume it's none. And 1 or 2 years up to 5 years. Even the Clintonite on the committee says you have a maximum of 5 years before you better get your fiscal house in order, else the bond markets, the international creditors are going to say enough is enough. And far too often, I think politicians up here have been saying, well, America's different. We can borrow and spend and tax and borrow and spend and over-regulate, but somehow we're going to survive. And I don't think if anybody tells us that, it's they're not being honest. And that's why we got to move on with this budget and make the cuts we can and get started on the next one because it's here already. It's here. We've got a deadline of April 15th when the House is supposed to kick out a budget which includes the real dollar amounts and the entitlements, and saving and strengthen these entitlement programs that no one's touched for years. Last time they touched them, Mark, they actually added to them under the Bush administration. So we've got a long ways to go, but I appreciate people calling in. Keep up to date, because this Congress, the freshman class, they need to continue to hear from people and concerned about the direction of our country.
Well, sir, you keep it up. We'll continue to watch you. We'll continue to back you. Anybody who's going to take a courageous stand, because actually there's no alternative. Our backs are against the wall. It's funny. The American people say this is unsustainable.
Yeah.
We actually have actuaries who say this is unsustainable. The only people who don't think this is unsustainable are liberals.
Yeah,
in Congress.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend.
When the president says it's sustainable deficits, I said, for how long? It doesn't work. American families and businesses, they have to balance every month. If they get behind, they know they've got to catch up or they're going to go bankrupt, and we've got to catch up in this country as well, Mark. So I appreciate the opportunity to visit about it and appreciate pushing.
Well, let me just say one other thing that I'm reading about you. You are a firebrand, and I like that, a thoughtful firebrand, because even in the state legislature, the leadership said, well, we can't really count on this guy. So you're not a count on this guy type of party hack. You are, well, what did my constituents send me here for? Is that about right?
I think that's right, and others might have different opinion, but you can count on me if you want to cut taxes and cut spending and balance the budget. I'll be there every time, and I have been there all the time, and because that's just the way it has to happen, Mark. And I think there was a wake-up message sent in November, and we have to be absolutely careful that doesn't get lost in the politics and the grind of Washington, D.C., which is the way this town is. It's a culture of overspending, and it's hard to confront that, and that's why the freshman class is so big, because people said it's time for a change.
Now, you have a Ph.D. plus you're a farmer and a rancher and an internet entrepreneur, so you've done things in the private sector, you've done things academically, and so you're quite well rounded, and you seem to bring all these qualities to bear, don't you?
We are doing our best, but I tell you, amongst the freshman class, there are some folks that are solid, and we need to have you continue to recognize and point those out, because that's the direction our leadership wants to go. And when we were arguing over the $60 billion they first brought out, or whatever the number was, and we said no, that's not enough, right direction. And but we've been making first downs, but we got to go for the touchdown on this budget and get everything we can, and it's going to be an uphill battle. It always is, fighting the left. Every one of these programs, if they aren't fighting against them, there's something probably going wrong on their side, and the cuts are going to be harder and harder as we get along. And when you're talking about a $1.6 trillion, we're talking about a $6 billion cut, and we got to argue about that. It's a less than a decimal point we're talking about here, Mark. So it's time to get serious, and hopefully that will happen.
All right, sir. This is Representative Tim Huelskamp, 1st District, Kansas, Republican freshman. Thank you, sir. Keep it up.
I appreciate it. Will do. Thank you, Mark.
All right. God bless.